Hello and welcome to the top floor, the podcast where Charlotte area CEOs get to tell their leadership journey. My name is Jeff Cass. I'm an executive coach and I lead a peer advisory group for CEOs and business leaders here in the Charlotte area, and I'll be your host today. And I'm happy to welcome Grant McKinstrie from Digital Position to the show. Grant, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jeff. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you could join. So I know a little bit about your business, and you and I were talking earlier. I don't know all the acronyms, but I'm going to ask you first, just generally. All right, tell me a little bit about your business and tell us about how you became the leader of the organization.
I'll at least start with what business we are, because at least in terms of how I came to be in terms of the position is a little bit of a longer story. But so we're a digital marketing agency. We primarily focus ourselves within the e-commerce space, specifically looking to niche ourselves in the health and wellness area, and I can get a little bit more into why that is later. But what digital marketing encompasses for us, at least, is the PPC, which is pay-per-click, and the SEO side, which is search engine optimization. That can really, what those mean, or what pay-per-click is if you go and do a Google search for a product or something, you're going to be served ads at the top. You'll see maybe shopping listings. You'll see some sponsored listings at the top or text listings at the top. And you'll see your organic listings below that. We manage and run all of that stuff for all of our clients that we work with. From there, there's Google. They do that on Bing. They do that on TikTok, Instagram, Meta, Amazon, Pinterest. You name it in terms of a platform, we will generally run it for you in terms of ads in the back end to get those served to the greatest amount of audience that possibly exists that is in relation to your brand or in relation to your ideal customer or buyer persona that you're looking to sell towards. And we just look to optimize that as best as possible so that we can get your product shown to all the people that are looking to buy it, or at least get people more aware of the product that you're looking to sell so that people can generate that interest and then look to, hopefully down the funnel, look to actually purchase your product. So in a very basic way, that's generally what we do.
Yeah, and I think impressions is one term, I think, in your world, right? I mean, people, when they, click on something, that I guess, is that considered an impression? Is that right?
So when they click, that would be generated as a click. An impression would be they actually saw it, but they didn't necessarily engage with it at that point. So if you do make a search and then your website shows up there, or whatever the platform might be, you show up in some way, shape, or form, that would be an impression. And then if they actually click in to go through to the website, then that would be the engagement metric or the click at that point.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I'm not that familiar with it. I want to make sure everybody kind of understands these things. I mean, you and I were talking earlier, PPC and SEO. I didn't know what they meant until about 3 hours ago. So that's good for me to kind of learn these things with everybody else. So a lot has changed in that space, I'm guessing, since the advent of the internet and Google in the last 20 years, maybe. I mean, can you maybe just talk a little bit about that? So maybe bring some folks that are a little bit more like me, up into the more modern day world.
Sure. I mean, really everything we see in this day and age is driven by marketing or advertising in some way, shape, or form. It's like whenever we're looking for any form of information or any sort of product, there is some form of marketing that is working behind the scenes on that. And it has really evolved over the course of the past, 10 to 20 years to what we receive. What everything in marketing is trying to boil it down to is trying to serve every individual person as an individual person. And there is a lot of fighting back and forth of people having their data being sold to other places, which I completely understand. And also I am totally for as well. It's like, if somebody's not telling you that they're selling you their information for making money for it or whatever it might be, that sucks and that's really annoying. But at the same time, in some cases, it's beneficial to be able to provide you a very unique experience. So you're being served products or information that is very relevant to you. Because I think a lot of us can get really aggravated by ads over the course of the lifespan. Is like, I think back to like 15 years ago, it's like the thought of an ad just like made me feel really gross. And now I'm here working and doing digital marketing and ads for all these companies and trying to help push that onto more people. But it's pushing it onto people that it actually matters to. Because certainly somebody who might not be looking for a new pair, or somebody who is, I don't know, somebody who is an avid runner just certainly won't care about looking to buy running shoes. So it's like, if they're getting constantly served like Nikes, Adidas, like all this different stuff, it's just like, oh, this is really annoying to me because I don't care about buying a pair of running shoes. But
Mhm.
for somebody who's a marathon runner who does 5Ks, 10Ks all the time, it's like that's something that's constantly in their mindset of like, oh, I need to figure out like what's this next pair of shoe that I'm going to buy? Do I need to do some research into that? So having that understanding of the buyer at the end of the day then allows us to cater our ads and all of the information or all of our audiences and who we're trying to serve to make that the most effective marketing tactic possible so that we get it in front of the right people. We're not trying to
Mhm.
annoy anybody. We're just really trying to get information in front of the right people who potentially need the products that we're looking to sell for some of our clients.
Okay. Okay. So you said 15 years ago, you might have looked at this differently. How did you get into this space?
Yeah, so it was completely on accident. Originally, I went to school with a major in sport management and finance, so still business related to a degree, but not marketing related by any means. I do remember going through marketing class in college, and I was like, this doesn't really interest me at all. But I originally wanted to go into an athletic department and grow in that sense. It was pretty vague at the time in terms of what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be involved in athletics in some way, shape, or form. And after finishing my last year of college, I was verbally promised a position to work into an athletic department. And then I signed a lease for an apartment. I went, I signed a lease for an apartment and I moved from North Carolina back to Vermont, which is where I'm originally from. And a week later was told that they are going through budget cuts and they can no longer offer me the position. Then a week after that, I found out my car was a rust bucket and I had to get rid of my car because it was unsafe for myself or for anybody else on the road to be able to drive.
Mhm.
And so everything just kind of started to slowly fall apart at once. And I was just in desperate need for a job. So I started to work at the AAA baseball team's ticketing service for a little while until I was able to find a job working within digital marketing just because I had customer service background before that.
Mhm.
So that really got me into the realm. I had no idea what SEO was when I started. So much like you, it was something that just kind of got tossed in front of me. I was like, I have no idea what this is. I don't know what those acronyms mean. This is a lot of confusing stuff to me. But what they did was they were just like, hey, you clearly have no idea what this is, but we would love to see if you could learn it. Take a week, learn as much as you possibly can, come back and tell us what you learn. And I
Mm.
ended up getting the job doing SEO for the automotive industry, and ended up just grinding through that for about 3.5 years. Got pretty burnt out, or just started to feel like I was getting overworked, but not getting compensated nearly as much as what I felt like I deserved out of that. And fortunately, got pulled out of that situation, got moved into digital position. And over the course of the 3.5 years, there was a one heck of a journey in terms of starting out as an SEO account lead, doing that, moving into doing SEO and PPC at the same time. And then from that point forward, understanding the core functions of what the business needed to run, all the operations that need to go into that, to then going into being an operations supervisor, to an operations manager, director of operations, and then CEO after that. Once it just made sense of the previous CEO wanting to take a step back from his role to spend more time with family, and I at least had all of the prerequisite knowledge of what does this business need to be able to function on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
So it just was this gradual progression system of just me dipping my toes a little bit more into every bit of the business until I had this holistic viewpoint and approach of this is what is needed and here is how this is what is needed to be able to run it, so that I could end up taking over, which was not the plan in my eyes for until it was asked upon me about a year ago. But who knows how long that was in the thought process for the rest of them, or at least for Roger and Steve, who are the two co-owners of the company. But
So
that's
really short, yeah, really short
yeah.
time frame there. You said 3.5 years in the business, and you've already been CEO for a year and a half, and you're relatively new, I would say. I mean, to the industry, but you were in a good position, I guess, for this particular company, is what it sounded like. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, and I think that was the one thing that, I mean, again, it wasn't ever an expectation from me, but within the first year of being here, the relationship that I had established with Roger and Steve and everybody else within the company here, it was just unlike anything I've ever felt in any position that I've had beforehand, where it's like I would trust these people with my life.
Mm.
It was just clearly a very well-built culture of people who really like what they do, but also work hard, have passions outside of work, can all come together and we can all bond over very similar things and just can have more of, it's always very cheesy to say family, but it's like it feels like that in some way, shape, or form.
Mm.
Like we can all really bond well together. We get along well. Every single person here I would go out and have a drink with after work if we were at an in-person setting. And whenever we get together at our annual summit, it's always just such a great time to be able to see everybody in person, get to interact with them, go out, just do fun stuff together. And it is funny too to think about if we were all in person together, it's hard to know whether or not it would be productive or unproductive because we would just probably screw around all the time just because I feel like we are all very good friends. But it's like, it's a really fun dynamic like that that has just always been a core part of the culture here of the company that is just so incredibly rare to come across in terms of my experience. And in all fairness, it's like my professional experience has only spanned about what, 8, 9 years.
Mhm.
So it's not very long in the grand scheme of things, but just in that short period of time, I feel incredibly lucky to have come across something like this so early on in my career and have been able to now have a part in it and also be able to continue to grow that beyond what it was even when I started, when I joined with 15 people in the team and now we're at 28. So
Yeah, that's interesting. So you said a couple of things there. I want to go back to them, but first, I
sure.
mean, let's start with digital position, okay? Because you said something there about culture is very unique. You know, you have a very close knit bond, but you also said 100% virtual. So how do you do both of those things? I mean, I get what you were saying. I mean, if you're together, you might be too close, but how do you foster that kind of environment when it's 100% virtual? And by the way, where is everybody? Are they all over the U.S.? Are they in the small pockets, or what? You know, if you would answer that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'll answer the second question first and then I'll go from there. So yeah, we have 28 people, I think spread across 16, maybe 17 states.
Okay.
So we're all over the course of the US. I think about 8 or 9 people are in the state of Connecticut or right around the New England area. So that was where the general hub was. The previous CEO is in Connecticut. So a lot of family ties or a lot of friend ties from early on have, funny enough, kind of tied together into where some of this culture has actually started within the company, funny enough. But then we have a couple of us down here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have some people in Florida, Texas, Idaho, Arizona, California,
Mm.
all over the place in terms of East Coast to West Coast. I would say about more than half of us are on the East Coast. We have about a third of us in the central time zone and about the other percentage is on the West Coast.
Okay.
But in terms of how we're able to somehow bring that all together to make the culture work is one, just the ability to find a lot of like-minded people. That has been the biggest thing of taking the hiring process very, very seriously. And that's something that we've had to continue to fine tune over time of just how do you find the right people to be able to continue to mesh with this culture really well? Because we've had a couple of instances where we've hired some people and they end up sticking out like a sore thumb. And it's like, then we start to slow. And it's something at the moment where it's like, okay, maybe they just need to like warm up to it a little bit, or maybe they just need to like settle in, whatever it might be. And then 6, 7, 8 months down the line, we see them start to struggle, or there's certain things that just aren't necessarily working from their end, or they don't seem to be super happy. And it just continues to reinforce the fact that like our feeling within the first couple of weeks of hiring some of these people, whether they connect really well with the team, they just hit the ground running really hard. If there's just a couple of those things that aren't met, generally we can tell about several months down the line whether or not the relationship will actually work. And
Okay.
it's hard to necessarily narrow down the specific characteristic, but there's just like a lot of a grit mentality and a lot of just passion behind what they do, not necessarily inside of work, but outside of work, to then be able to carry that into the work that they do on a daily basis.
Okay.
Kind of tangentially went that in a different direction, but to go back to your original question, I think of how do we continue to do that, or how do we continue to build this culture virtually? We do every single month we have a health and wellness challenge that we all do. So
Mm.
currently every single person in the company has Whoops. So if you're
Mm.
not familiar with what a Whoop watch is, it tracks your performance, your sleep recovery, a bunch of different data points within just how your body feels and how your body's recovering from certain things, tests or measures how much strain you're putting your body throughout a workout, through running, whatever it may be. So we can all continue to be a little more mindful about health and wellness and what we're doing on a daily basis. So we have monthly challenges that are based around that. So we all stay in contact and competitive to a degree of what we're doing with our Whoop strain challenges, our sleep recovery, whatever it might be, so that we're just having fun with that. And we'll toss banter here and there if somebody's being really lazy or something like that. Or I don't know, some guy on our team would run a marathon and be like, Alan just got like 45,000 steps today. Like, what the heck's going on over there? But it's like stuff like that where we're all kind of staying in tune with kind of what each other are doing to a degree because of stuff like that. On top of that, we have monthly coffee breaks where you get paired up with a random person within the company that's not within your department that you can continue to communicate with, or that you communicate with on a, I don't know, half hour, 45, 1 hour time frame within the period of the month. So you can just get to know more people in the company, get to at least interact with them, whereas you might not normally do on a day-to-day basis. And then we have quarterly team activities. So we've done one thing where all of us have done like a Bob Ross paint and sip type of thing. We've done a family feud. We've done trivia. We've done escape rooms virtually. Really, you name it, and we've probably done it at this point. We've just done a ton of those quarterly team activities. If we just pair out in different groups, we all compete against each other, get those competitive juices flowing, and have fun with it. And it's just a nice way to spend time with each other. Then, as I mentioned beforehand, with the annual summit that we have when we all get together in person and we fly into one location together and we just get to see each other and have a good time, put a name to the face. If you don't get on Zoom with them too often, but it's just, I don't know. There's just so many things that I feel like we do on a regular basis to have that FaceTime with the team, so that we all know we're here. We exist. We have a good time. Like, I don't know. I feel like I've spoken a lot for the past like 5 minutes on that, but hopefully that's good.
No, that's okay, Grant. I'm going to let you talk about all these things because I think it's interesting. I mean, I came from a business that was mostly in person, and we had customers we had to deal with directly, but we had, some pool, especially after the pandemic, where there was a lot of virtual. How do you do that? 100% virtual is what I'm interested in. And I think you have a lot of things going on here, as I think about it, that facilitate that. I can see it, your monthly challenge, the monthly coffee breaks, the quarterly team activities, all virtual, right? All of those are virtual is what you're saying.
Right.
But you only get together once a year for this annual summit. And how long is this summit?
Yeah, so we do the summit for about 3 full business days. And then there's you get a half a day previously to travel. So yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, we have originally done that from like a Wednesday to Friday thing. And now this year we're doing it from like a Tuesday to Thursday. So you can get like your Monday and Friday to make sure you catch up on work type of stuff. But yeah, it's a good couple of days where we talk about our annual goals. Did we meet our goals from last year? Setting new goals for this year. Is there anything we need to kind of band together and figure out together while we have all of this time, when we're all in the same room? Just because ideas are flying left and right when we're all in the same room together, versus if we're in a full team meeting on Zoom, it's just a lot harder to get engagement out of something like that, where we can all kind of enjoy each other's presence while also coming up with new ideas and new ways to kind of steer the company at that point. So it's really just a nice big brainstorming session for a couple of days of what are our next steps? How do we continue to kick ass? And how can we just continue to make everybody here at the company happy and move in the right direction?
Okay. So you go to some place that is more like quiet or a resort so that you can all kind of be together, or where do you typically go for these?
Yeah, so we have usually gone to Simsbury, Connecticut, which is where the previous CEO has resided around. So he's relatively close to there. But just because we've known the people at the hotel that we've rented out from, so we've generally got a good deal there. We're actually going back there this year just because we have realized after this past year, we went to Nashville, Tennessee, which was a great time, but also realized it was kind of distracting from bringing everybody together to just kind of bond, I guess, to a degree. It was a lot of fun. Nashville was sweet. First time being there. But at the same time, I think there was a lot to be said about going to one of those quieter places where everybody can just kind of relax and hang out together versus we got to
Mhm.
go out, we got to check out like XYZ bar or go to these places and like walk around all over the place, which is all these fun experiences you can still have with the team. But I think I can't obviously speak for everybody else on the team, but I felt like it is a much more fun and personal experience with the team being in one of those quieter settings of where we go back to Connecticut.
Yeah, I don't blame you. So here, I just a quick question just came to my mind. You guys are always virtual. Do you ever just pick up the phone and call people, or is it always like pick up the computer and do a face to face?
Good question. Yeah, there hasn't been a whole lot of like pick up the phone and call. There are a couple of people on the team that I have done that with in the past just to check in or just say hey or whatever it might be.
Hmm.
But I feel like a lot of us are pretty, I wouldn't say attached to Slack, but it's just such an easy form of communication where if anything, any sort of communication does need to happen, it generally goes through there. I mean, like I have it on my phone. I think a lot of people within the company do. And it's
Hmm.
not anything that's required, but it's just something that a lot of people, again, I think many people here have a very similar mentality, which is why we all get along so well together is there's always the resistance of having this work life kind of be this together thing. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily like that here, but it is, I guess, harmonious, I think is the right word between the two,
Hmm.
where it's not necessarily a balance. It's like a give and take that is constantly happening just based on, I'm trying to think. I don't think that's really the best way to put it, but I don't know if you get where I'm going with it, but it's just one of those things where they should be able to commingle in the same space, but not feel like one is kind of dominating the other. It's just like if
Okay.
you feel like you need to split the two, I feel like that makes things a lot harder than just having them be uh than them being able to, yeah, I guess commingle in the same space is the best way to put it.
I mean, that's a hard thing to manage. It's hard for CEOs, hard for business leaders to manage
Mhm.
work-life balance, right? I mean, because there tends to be, somebody always grabbing at you for something, right? Now, you're saying, some of the folks that have a phone and have, multiple electronics, are they being grabbed too much, or are they okay with it? The expectation is you get the work done, and it's okay if you do it, as needed, because sometimes your client might call at a different time, and they're
Mhm.
they're okay with that is what it sounds like. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I interpret when you said that.
Yeah, so I guess that's one difference too, is like maybe you could have Slack on your phone or something like that. I don't know how many people have email on their phone. I don't think a whole lot of people do have that
Mm.
connected, which would then separate the difference from client to DP versus DP from DP.
Mm-hmm.
So Slack is more for like internal communication, and then email would be external communication. And I think a large majority of it is focused around just people will continue to have that internal communication, but will make those boundaries for external communication. Like I don't expect any single person on this team except leadership on an emergency basis to have to go on their email over the course of a weekend and respond to something.
Mm.
That's just not that's not anything anyone, people should have those boundaries for sure. I guess what I was trying to get to before, and I'm glad you're helping make this clarification, is that people will come and do it if they really feel the need to, which funny enough, just a large majority of people will, but it's not a requirement at the same time. But people have
Mm-hmm.
found this nice balance between this is where I'm still happy and I'm still able to draw this line of I can still be involved with work, but I'm still also able to live my life in a very happy and natural way at the same time, which
Mm-hmm.
is there's a lot to be said for something like that versus like I just cut the clock at 4 p.m. every single day. No matter what happens after that, I just won't touch work. But then in my mind, I come back the next day, I'm like, oh my God, all this stuff has just piled up over the course of the last, what, 12 to 14 hours or however long until you
Mm-hmm.
log in the next day. And I'm like, crap, well, now I feel like I'm really behind. It's like, I would rather just I would rather keep up to date with everything over the course of the day, over the course of the night, so that everything continues to stay smooth sailing all the time. And
Okay.
trying to find that balance in personal life sometimes gets in the way a little bit, but I guess you could ask my fiance a little bit more about that in terms of how she feels about it. But all in all, I think it's a really healthy way to just make sure that what happens in work doesn't become overwhelming and then seeps into having a harder and harder emotional impact in your normal day-to-day life.
Okay, that's good. I mean, I think a lot of people would aspire to that. Now, one of the metrics you might look at that would say that everybody agrees with you is turnover. So it sounds like you might not have much turnover at your company.
Yeah, it's been very, very little. And when we have had any sort of turnover, there's been a sort of clear identifier of like, this just wasn't going to work long term anyways. Where either they weren't going to be happy within whatever they were aspiring to do or look to get into down the line, or I don't know. I guess it's hard to say because there's a lot of different reasons as to why somebody would leave or why we would end up having to let somebody go. But at the end of the day, very low turnover. And also at the same time, whenever we have identified that as potentially an issue or something that needs to be taken care of, it's more. I would say although in the moment it doesn't feel mutual, I think long term it is way better for both parties in terms of that parting of the ways than what people might realize in the moment. And maybe that's overly hopeful from my perspective, but I 1000% firmly believe that in every single situation that we have parted ways with somebody, that has been without a doubt the best decision for everybody involved.
Yeah, there's got to be a good fit, and apparently, that maybe the fit wasn't as apparent in the beginning, and I can understand that. I think we've all made hiring mistakes, and it sounds like you do a pretty good job with hiring. It sounds like if you've doubled the number of people. I assume you've doubled the revenue as well in the last 3 or 4 years. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a high performing team that does not turn over well, that seems to be like-minded and be very energetic in a lot of ways. So let me get to this question here. If you were to talking to somebody that's running an organization or running a division or a new CEO, what would you say to them about the top 1 or 2 things that they have to do to create a high performing team?
Yeah. People that are just able to work well together, which comes down to that whole culture point, is have you really identified of what is the culture of your company and what is going to continue to make everybody within that company happy, and also get along with the other people that you bring into the team. And that's, for us, is just those top performing people, those people that really love the grit, the grind, and also have all of those passions in and outside of work. And those are all the things that we look to continue to pry out of people within the interview process to really understand that if this is going to be is this going to be your forever home at Digital Position, or is this something that might fizzle out within a couple of months? And it just seems like it's a honeymoon effect within this just initial interview process type of thing, which is incredibly hard to do. And certainly to your point, it's like we all have our own hiring mistakes that we've made over time. We just continue to learn from those and continue to identify what were some of those yellow flags that maybe we ignored in the beginning that we just didn't necessarily identify right off the bat, and apply that to any sort of future hires. But it's almost always more beneficial to, well, there's like the whole like hire fast, fire faster, promote fastest type of idea, where I have been somebody who has personally benefited from putting my heart and soul into the work that I do and then continuing to be provided value or growing within the company as I continue to do more. So every single person that comes to this company, I tell them, I was like, if you're in here and you are busting your butt day in and day out and you are providing a ton of value to us, who am I to hold you back from just continuing to compensate you properly for that and just continue to grow the crap out of you over time? Because not only are they going to feel way more fulfilled by being able to provide all of that value and putting all that effort into something and then getting something in return for it, everybody else within the company benefits from it as well. It's like as soon as somebody else is able to be on that top track of they're just busting their ass and doing everything that they possibly can to succeed, the rest of the company ends up thriving from that. We end up hitting our goals, and then everybody could potentially get a bonus at the end of the year, and people thrive from it. And that's something that where everybody becomes happier and happier, the more we're able to support those types of people. And that's the type of people that we want to continue to hire. And that's also not to say that there is a ton of value still to some of those people that like to come in, check the boxes, and then just at the end of the year, get a couple of % increase in a raise, and then just continue to move on and have that nice balance between the two things. But also in terms of where we've just found a ton of success within the company is we are full of people that just continually want to do more and more and more and want to grow and grow and grow. And they just continue to show that day in and day out. The entire company benefits from it. And the culture thrives because of it as well, because everybody is under the same mentality and mindset of continuing to do what they possibly can to move things forward, grow their own individual lives, and then also have a pretty kick-ass culture at the end of it too. So it's kind of like a double whammy between those two things where one happens with the other, and it just fortunately works out that way when you're able to really identify those key players in the interview process. And also, if it's not working, a toxic seed in a company can really screw everything up very quickly and can backtrack you so much faster. It's like you can take one step forward by somebody who you think is hired, who you think was a good hire, turns out to not be a good fit, and can really pull you back 5 or 6 steps if you're not careful enough or whatever it might be. And it's just really recognizing those things sooner versus later and making sure that you are continuing to look for the betterment of the entire team as a whole in every decision that you make, really.
So those, I mean, you probably said 3 or 4 things there. You said a lot. I mean, so the one or
Sorry.
two things, yeah, that's okay. It's all right. I'm gonna try and whittle them down from what you said, because I just made a couple of notes as you were talking. The hiring process obviously is important, and knowing who you are and knowing the culture, that's important to you. And managing that on either the hiring side or when you made a mistake, move on that as well. So that's number one. It sounds like for you. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. But the other thing that I heard, that came through is the management team is very engaged. It feels like you're very engaged with what's going on. You know the people, you know what's going on, you know the business, and you invest in those folks that you feel need it or are worthy of it. I mean, those are a couple other big things that I would say as you're building a high performing team that I heard from you, that feel like they stand out from what you've done.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without the leadership team that we have here, I mean, really none of this would be possible without a doubt. And it's continuing to have, not only the people that we're hiring as account leads or as support structures, but we also need them to all mesh with the leadership team as well, because obviously I cannot be building the culture all independently on my own. It has to be everybody together, and that has to flow through the leadership team down into the rest of the team at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really continuing to have the trust and faith, which I could not have possibly more trust in the leadership team that we have here, and people that I would consider close friends as well. Where it's like I've dropped, like at the drop of a hat, I would be willing to fly to any single one of them if they were having a tough time or needed help in anything. It's like I would give my life for any single one of them just to make sure that they are able to continue to do the best job that they possibly can be happy in their lives. And yeah, it's just something very
unique
for sure. Like it's again, I always hate using the term family in a business setting just because it's so cheesy and it's like very overused to a degree. But it's like, I at any point in time, it's like I would do anything I could just to make sure that they are okay and that they are well taken care of.
Okay, that's good. Now, I'm sure that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? I mean, everybody has their own challenges, and talk a little bit about, if you would, maybe the biggest challenge in your business today, or a couple of the biggest challenges in your business.
Sure. I mean, the biggest example of that is the beginning of this year, where I mean, we technically lost about 10 to 15% of our business over the course of Q1, which for me was a heavy emotional hit. And it wasn't something that we weren't specifically, it's not something that we weren't expecting, but in terms of the magnitude and impact that it generally had in terms of how we needed to really reshape the business and how we needed to march forward was a lot more dramatic than I expected it to be. And that, to your point, not all sunshines and rainbows. And I it's funny you use that exact phrasing because I think I said that multiple times to our team in terms of having those conversations of like, yeah, we're in a pretty crappy situation here, and we have not been innovating the business as much as we have needed to over the course of the past couple of months. We need to lock it in. We need to kick our ass in gear. We need to light a fire under our butt, whatever it means, or whatever we need to do, put pedal to the metal, and we need to just move forward, and we need to get X, Y, and Z done. And we need to just start shifting how we need to viewpoint this business, improve the service as we need to, continue to get our lead funnel a lot healthier. And it was just not necessarily needing to get very mad at anybody, but it's just we need to get really serious about this or all of us are screwed come the end of this year. And to that point, it's like when you have that culture built behind it of people are really willing to just drop everything and just get it done, whatever it takes, have that grit and grind mentality. I mean, we were busting through that entire situation was generally fixed within a 1 to 2 month time frame at that point. We're continuing to reap the benefits from it at that point where I felt like we had this massive, massive change as a company within, a 1 to 2 month period. Once we were really able to identify, here are our problems, here's what we need to be able to fix it. And then this is what we need to continue to be doing moving forward so that this does not happen again. Because there was just a lot that had to shift at the same time. I mean, again, to kind of our conversation earlier, we did have a little bit of turnover that we just naturally had to go through simply to pull ourselves into a better position, but also recognizing that some of these people that we have are just not the best fits that we should be, or are not the best fits for what we need right now. And we need to continue to press forward and make the best decisions so that the greater good of the people within this company can benefit from it and make sure that we're taking care of them at the bottom line, and go from there. So yeah, it was a very, very serious point in the business where for a long time, I'm a very steady person. I haven't historically always gone through like these big highs and lows types of things. And recognizing that we really needed to go through like a pretty big low and just get really serious about things, maybe get a little mad along the way, which I mean, I was feeling those things for sure, but in terms of how I communicate that is very different because I don't necessarily want anybody to panic, but at the same time, we need some urgency in those situations. And at the same time, you go through those lows and it just makes you appreciate those highs 10 times more because over the course of the past, month or two, after we got through everything, we started to push through. We're still feeling it within the business right now, but we know in the next couple of months, everything is going to be turned around and we're going to be moving in a much better position than we would have been had we not done anything in the beginning. Is making things feel just a lot more relaxed, but also we have a really clear objective and focus in terms of how we need to execute for the rest of the year. And everyone's dialed in and it feels good.
Well, if you've been able to turn it very quickly, you said it was relatively fixed within 1 to 2 months, and it sounds like that's going to continue to play out. But as long as you don't get any other surprises, I mean, that's dramatically fast. I mean, you have to fix the problem like a 10 or 15% drop in revenue.
Yeah, without a doubt. And again, it was one of those things where we had some form of expectation, or we somewhat saw it coming, but it was the preparation going into it was just not as much as what it needed to be. And yeah, I guess that's all I really need to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So you've been a CEO now for a year, I think is what you told me earlier, correct?
Yep, correct.
So what do you like most and what is the most challenging for you?
What I like most is the fact that I'm continuing to have relationships with everybody within this company and also continue to kind of vet the process of the people that get to come in with it, that get to come within this company. It's continuing to have that impact on culture, I think is awesome because Roger, the previous CEO, who I think did a phenomenal job with it, as well as Steve. And the fact that the three of us, I feel like mesh really well together, have very similar like morals, values, outlooks in a lot of ways. Being able to just continue that through my own way, I think has been a lot of fun, but also just getting to interact with all these people within the company who I think are just like genuinely awesome human beings. So just having that sort of that interaction where had I come in as a CEO without even being part of digital position beforehand, I think would suck. Primarily because not coming in with that type of not necessarily like the lack of reputation or the lack of connection that you've had with everybody before being moved up into the CEO position, I think would just, in my opinion, I just couldn't see myself doing that anywhere else. Like, this was a very unique situation where I felt like I was given all of the proper tools to be able to build up into this role and have a good relationship with everybody and feel comfortable that everyone is going to be straight up with me and not necessarily be afraid to talk to me if there's an issue or
Mhm.
tell me if I'm crap, because I have a ton to learn and I am not a perfect CEO by any means. And I am willing to learn every step of the way. And the fact that I have that trust and foundation built with everybody on the team brings me a lot of peace of mind, which is helpful because I
Mhm.
know if I do suck, people will tell me, and I really want them to, because I don't want to just suck and then slowly bring this company down and people just say like, you're doing a great job. It's like, no, I'm not. So it's very helpful in that sense.
There's a lot to learn as a CEO. I mean, and you're
There
new,
is.
right? I mean, I don't know if that weighs in on you, but I kind of got that sense as you're talking because, every other job you had only prepares you partially for what you took on.
Hmm. Yeah, and yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it, is like the challenge is certainly there is still so much to learn and understand. And I mean, it's like I am 29 years old. I have a ton more years left in me to continue to
Mhm.
learn stuff. And it's like to pick this up early is awesome. And I'm so glad that I can do it because I think it's at a time in my life where I feel like I can dedicate so much time and hours into it. And I can hopefully just continue to build from that over years and years to come and hopefully
Mhm.
become an incredible CEO down the line. But it's the challenge is, yeah, there is so many hats to wear in a smaller company and so many things to figure out. And there is no perfect way to handle everything or anything as being a CEO. And you just continue to have to run with it the best that you can. Because I've always been historically in my life, I've always historically been like a support person where it's like
Mhm.
wherever you need me to be, whatever position you need me to fill in, it's like I will absolutely figure it out to the best of my ability, and do it. And this is one of those things where I still technically filled that role, but then I need to do that for everybody else at the same time to a degree.
Mhm.
And I need to continue to guide that ship, and I need to be very confident in all of my decisions, and I need to be able to do all the proper research, and I need to lean on the team, which again, the team that we have here, I would not be able to do it without them. And fortunately, because of the foundation that's been built here, otherwise I would be pretty screwed, quite honestly. So I am very fortunate in that degree, in that aspect. But
Well,
it's
and then
yeah, it's just a
communicate.
lot. Yep.
Communicate, is one you didn't have to communicate to a broader group before. You mentioned it earlier when the problem came up. You had to communicate it with the right sense of urgency, so that people got the message and that we needed to take care of it. But it wasn't, dramatic. It wasn't like, the company's going, it's going to, go bankrupt tomorrow. That wasn't what you're saying. But how do you strike that balance and how you communicate? It sounded like was one thing that you were still learning, to figure out.
Yep. Yeah. No, great point. I'm glad you were able to pick that out of that too. But yeah, it's yeah, just becoming more of a leader just on a weekly basis is really trying to guide the ship and make sure that everybody is on the same page, continuing to, if tough, really being comfortable in the uncomfortable, I think is really the best way I could possibly put it. And something that I've been telling myself very frequently is you have to have a lot of uncomfortable conversations. There's a lot of things that just are not always going to be perfect, and you need to just continue to handle those and get on top of them as soon as possible. And it's really just owning up to my mistakes as often as I possibly can, because without that, we don't move forward. And
Hmm.
fortunately, that's something that I think I've always done well with, is like I am more than happy to make the mistakes, but I just need to continue to make those decisions as frequently as possible. Because I think trying to think of how specifically put, it's like if you make 5 decisions a week and you have a 20% success rate versus if you make 50 decisions a week and you have a 20% success rate. Yeah, you're going to fail a lot more, but you're also going to succeed that much more at the same time. You're going to figure that out and hopefully make your success rate that much higher over time. And that was probably one of the biggest things that I needed to figure out sooner versus later was I just need to not sit on things for as long, and I just need to be moving forward so that the business can continue to move forward that much quicker.
Yeah. Okay. I completely understand. All right. Well, good answer. I mean, that's helpful. So let me shift gears a little bit. Okay. So think about, maybe the folks that were most influential for you and the coaches or mentors that maybe shaped your career or shaped you the most, either, personally or professionally.
Yeah. I mean, really that entire answer comes down to both Roger and Steve, who are the co-owners of the company. Roger being the previous CEO, Steve, who is still involved within the business, who's the CMO of the business currently. And what the saying is, you're a culmination of like the top 3 or 5 people that you spend most of your time with, kind of thing. And it's like the amount that I've been able to learn from those two over the course of these past 3.5 years is more than I think I could realistically take away from a lot of my life, just in terms of how they have generally conducted themselves on a regular basis. But also, it's like 2 people who have built a successful business together and who have all of these aspirations that I have always looked to aspire to have as well has been incredibly impactful on me in terms of my understanding of what I'm capable of and my learning ability throughout this entire process of being CEO. The fact that these 2 people who I've looked up to from realistically within the first couple of months of working here have instilled all of this trust into me and have been able to mentor me, coach me, and also let me fail at sometimes too, where it's like they could have told me the answer to certain things, but who would that have benefited of? Then I need to still at the same time go through my own failures and need to recognize that and be able to take that and apply that to future decisions at the same time, where they have had incredible foresight of just making sure that no matter what happens, we're going to figure it out. I'm going to continue learning from this. And that at the end of the day, really nobody's life is at stake. And just making sure that there is that type of confidence in me is just so incredibly helpful at the same time, so that I can continue to exude that into everybody else within the company, that I know what I'm doing is the right thing. They feel the same way about that. And then everybody else in the company can continue to be guided in the right direction just based off of that. And it's not like I always have to rely on their confidence at this point, but it was just over that period of time of that mentorship of them continuing to guide me into this role has been so incredibly impactful. And I would not be nearly in the position that I am now if it wasn't for that.
So it sounds like they gave you, first of all, they trusted you, which was a big boost for you, right, at this time, as you take it. It sounded like they gave you a lot of latitude, even if you had to fail. I mean, they let you have that latitude, but it also sounds like together you guys have a clear vision of where to go, which maybe provided a framework for you and the rest of the team to operate in. Is that a good summary maybe of why they were really helpful for you?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect summary. And it's also just some of the things where, actually, no, I'm just going to look to talk circles in there. So yeah, no, that's 100% it. That's good.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So what have you learned about yourself since you've taken over the CEO role?
That I feel far more capable than I never would have thought in a million years that I would have ended up becoming a CEO of a company. It was never, and I don't know if this is necessarily bad to say, it was never an aspiration that I particularly had. I was just continuing to do what I was passionate about in the moment, or I felt like I was doing my best work and I was feeling fulfilled in the moment. And it just continued to grow from there. And that's what led to this. So in terms of what I have recognized that I am capable of has completely shifted a ton of things within my personal life in terms of like working out, sports, and just relationships in general, in terms of how I need to go about my life to continue to maximize the value that I'm getting out of everything. And I feel like just because of how I have continued to understand the world as it is as a CEO in a very, very different lens, which it is so incredibly crazy to think about how different my mindset was 2, 3 years ago, which is really not that long ago, to now is just unbelievably different of how I view the world and how I view my weekly routines and how I approach everything on a regular basis is just so drastically different in that I care so much about what I am spending my time on, who I'm spending my time with, and how hard I put my effort into anything that I'm doing. It's, yeah, I don't know. It's generally, I feel like that's generally broad, but at the same time, it's like just those couple of things in and of itself has been so impactful in terms of, I feel like I am leading such a happier life because of it all. Then, to be fair, COVID times was a very depressing time for a lot of us at the same time, but it's just
Yeah.
that at the same time, thinking about it is light years different from what it is now.
So why are those things in your life different then? But since you took over the role, do you feel like you have more control over them, or is it just the change in the lens that you had, taking over the business?
Yeah, I think beforehand I've to a degree always been a very easygoing person and just kind of a go with the flow type of thing. And I'm just like, whatever happens, happens. Like it is what it is. Like I'm
Mhm.
not a very picky person. But it has driven a lot more conviction within my day to day in terms of this is where I want to spend my time. This is how I want to, like, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to spend my time. Versus before, and I'm just like, like we'll see what happens. Like, so
Okay.
I think it just has made me become a lot more decisive in my regular day to day, which is something that is absolutely needed to be within this role. And was something that I very quickly had to learn coming into it was like, I just need to be very firm in my decision making and I need to figure that out sooner versus later, or else everybody is screwed. Because
Mhm.
my lack of decision making means it impacts way more people than just myself. And I need to be mindful about that all the time.
Hmm.
And so the way that I have seen that benefit me within the role here has just been, I would feel stupid not to apply that to my regular day to day. And it has just paid dividends in way more ways than I could possibly imagine, just by being more decisive and figuring out this is what makes me happy. This is what I want to do. And this is where my time is best spent so that I can enjoy the maximum amount of happiness that I possibly can in my life.
Okay. So CEOs steer a business. I mean, it sounds like that steering, transferred over for you into your personal life, which is interesting. That's a
Mhm.
very interesting thing to learn, and probably a good thing at a young age. I mean, because 29, I'm a little bit older than you, Grant, but I think that's a terrific change for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I couldn't be happier. It's certainly something that I never really expected to learn along the way, but I'm certainly happy that I did. And it's something that I wish I had understood sooner, but it's like, the first best time would have been to learn it 20 years ago. The next best day is today. So it's just
Hey,
like you gotta take with it what you can.
you're only looking forward. That's good news. So we're
Exactly.
running out of time here a little bit. So I just got one last question for you. Okay. So if
Sure.
you think about what you've learned, becoming the CEO, and whether it was personal or whether it was professional, what kind of advice would you give to a new CEO?
Yeah, it's really comes down to organizing your time really well. If the time management isn't there, it can really get away from you very quickly and everything spirals out of control if you do not know how to manage your calendar, if you don't know how to meet with people on a concise basis, which I think it's kind of funny just thinking back on the podcast in general. I know I ramble quite a bit, and it's something that I've had to continually improve over time so that I can make sure that if we can have a 15 to 30-minute conversation as opposed to a full hour, that is going to be way more impactful down the line for everybody involved and save people more time. And that that is probably one of the biggest things is making sure that you can understand and manage your time effectively, and also just finding people that you can trust, because there is no possible way that I would be here if it wasn't for the rest of the team here, that I feel like I could put my life in their hands type of deal. And it just is impossible without that. And I know
Mhm.
it can be a lot harder in a lot of relationships to have more people to trust with, but the sooner you're able to find those people and able to make that work, it's like really the world is your oyster at that point to be able to make the business or your venture or whatever it is into anything that you want it to. If you can have people that you can truly bond together with and trust at the end of the day.
Yeah, a strong team, you can't replace that. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Grant, I really enjoyed this. I appreciate you being on the show. We'll have a little bit of follow up here afterwards. I'll talk about that, but I think for now I'm just going to shut off the recording. Okay.